Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the May 10th, 2016 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my distinct privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room on the shelves. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to pick up a copy. You can follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be opportunities for public comment on more than one occasion. Under item 4, which is the reserve for public comment of a general nature with respect to items that are not on tonight's agenda. And then we entertain public comment with respect to items that are on our agenda. So if you have any questions or comments of a general nature, when we get to item 4, which I suspect will be very soon, please come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and we welcome hearing from you. It is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I would therefore like to ask everyone to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And with that, next order of business is to ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Fatimo. Here. Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Mayor Tully.
Here. Thank you. That brings us to item 3, which pertains to approval of council meeting minutes. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Do I have a motion with respect to our regular council meeting minutes from May 3rd, 2016?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the May 3rd, 2016 minutes as presented.
I second the motion to approve the minutes.
Any questions, comments, changes, or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. And just like that, as promised, we are at item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. At this time, if any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature, we would ask you to please come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and we welcome hearing from you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Tom Casey. I live at 4925 Oakwood. I've been a resident since 1968. I'm also president of the Downers Grove Historical Society. I wrote some notes, but I don't have my glasses, so I can barely read them, so I'm going to just kind of wing it here. First, I want to, and I hope this is, and I'm saying this in the right section of the meeting, but I want to express full support for the granting of landmark status for all 3 properties, and that's directly from the Historical Society Board of Directors. I also want to thank Stan Popovich and his family for showing up on Saturday to attend the Founders Day Historic Home Preservation at the museum, at the library. We had over 50 people, which is the largest turnout we've ever had in the history of at least me doing Founders Day with the group. I also want to thank all who participated in promoting and actually had programs in Founders Day. This is the first time that we've had all of these groups come together to promote preservation in Downers Grove, and those groups include PDHA, Friends of the Edwards House. Without even asking for their help, they offered to help, knocked on doors, and promoted the program, which is why we got 50 people on a Saturday, a very nice Saturday. The DG Bike Club, Windy City Walkers, Grove Foundation, and the Downers Grove Museum. Lastly, I want to just share with you a little bit about a new program. The Downers Grove Historical Society in 1991 started what's called the Centennial Home Program. And that was a program for homes that were 100 years or older in the village of Downers Grove. The homeowners were required to do their own research. The society would review that research and then approve them for a plaque. We had over 40 homes in that program to date, 8 of which have been demolished since its inception. Right now, this year, we just started, and you're going to hear about it more. We are changing that program to include homes that are 50 years or older. So if someone has a mid-century ranch, they can apply and get approval for a historic home program plaque. It's completely voluntary. We do believe that it can be and I hate to use the term feeder, but it can be a feeder program for more landmarking in the village. Again, it's the same program as the Centennial Home Program, and the resident does their own research and is then approved for a plaque, which they purchase. The most important thing about the Centennial Home Program and this new Historic Homes Program is all of this research is archived at the Downers Grove Museum. So any residents that want to do research on their homes or other homes or even neighborhoods, it's all there, including those properties that have been demolished. So you'll be hearing more and more about this program in the future, and I just want to let you know about the change. And actually, I also want to tell you about another partnership. We've partnered with the Park District Museum to administer the program and to also help us with our marketing outreach. So we're going to be teaming with them to promote the program, which is one of the reasons we only had 40 homes when it was a Centennial Home program. So we look forward to having close to 100 within the next 2 years, and hopefully that'll lead to more landmark properties. So thank you for your time.
Terrific. Thank you very much, and appreciate all you do to help spread the word, educate, and celebrate our community's rich history. Appreciate you being here and being involved with all the activities you described.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks to the society as well. Other questions or comments of a general nature? Questions or comments of general nature with respect to items not appearing on tonight's agenda? Hearing there are none, we will then move to item 5, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Burnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda is approved unanimously. That brings us to item 6. This is our active agenda. We have no items on tonight's active agenda, so we will go right to the meaty first reading or workshop agenda. The first reading or workshop agenda is a more informal segment of our agenda where items are presented for discussion and consideration only. No vote will be taken tonight on any of these items. It's an opportunity for the Village Council to ask questions of staff and also receive any input or questions from members of the audience. As is customary, I usually ask the Village Manager, David Fieldman, to introduce the item or items through either himself or one of our other fine staff members. I will ask Mr. Fieldman to please kick us off. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. Tonight, our fine staff member presenting the first 4 items is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich. Stan?
Good evening, Mr. Popovich.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Pulling double duty this weekend.
I am, yes. It was a very exciting program on Saturday, but my 4-year-old fell asleep, so I don't know if my speech was boring or not, but he took a nap during the program, so I
Well, the
apologize.
important thing was that the 50-plus people who were there did not fall asleep.
That's the good thing, so.
You did a nice job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor. The first petition, first item before you tonight is a historic landmark designation for 701 Maple Avenue. The property is on just east of downtown here at the corner of Maple and Benton Avenue. It's a Queen Anne home shown here in the picture that was built in 1895. The home possesses many of the features of a Queen Anne that you would expect. Showing the front elevation, it's got clapboard siding. This is the north elevation that faces Maple. First floor porch that runs the entire width of the home. A nice second floor porch up above the main porch, and then these very unique sort of porches on the sides here and here, which are pretty unique to the Queen Anne. And then additionally, it's got some nice ornamentation, some nice front steps. And if we look at the side, this is the east elevation. It's got a rounded bay, which is a first floor bay. I believe that's in the dining room. And then a projection, which we see in a lot of the Queen Anne's as well. And then again, the roof is a hip roof with some projecting gables, which we can see here in this elevation as well. And then it also, so it qualifies under the Queen Anne standard, and then also it qualifies as a master builder. This is William James Herring, who was the architect, builder, and contractor for the home, and this was his family home here on Maple Avenue. He did a lot of buildings in town, including the original Methodist Episcopal Church at 1032 Maple Avenue. And then he also did the Farmers and Merchants Bank building, which is this building. It's pictures a few years old, but this is the building at the northeast corner of Main and Curtis. So he was the architect behind that. So a couple of reasons for significance for this property. Just to review the criteria for you, the property has to be 50 years or older, and then one of 12.302B, which are listed here. So in this case, it does meet the 50-year-old criteria. It's built in 1895, and then meets criteria 3 and 4, which is the Queen Anne architectural style, and then a master builder or master architect with William James Herring, who has did a lot of local work when he was alive, including the construction of his family home at this site. If there's any questions at this point, I'd be happy to answer those questions for the mayor and the council.
Thank you. Questions from members of the Village Council with respect to this item? Hearing none, I'll just say what I'm going to say for each one of these is, once again, I think, I speak for myself and all my colleagues, we're very pleased to see all the different applications coming forward to the council through the process after the recent revision to the village's historic preservation ordinance. This is very exciting. This is now with these three tonight, there'll be four that have come before us in very short order afterwards. So I think that's very exciting. We're glad to see that the work was helpful and is producing results. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? I guess we'll go to the next item.
We'll go to the next item.
Please.
So the next one, I'm very pleased to, I'll be the petitioner and the applicant here, and the staff. It's 1000 Burlington Avenue, which is the village's Main Street train station, located here at the corner of Burlington and Main Street. I would first like to thank the Friends of the Edwards House for all their assistance on this project. They create a lot of the background information for us that you'll see in your packet tonight as well. And they shot a pretty cool aerial drone video of the train station, which I won't show here, but it's available if someone wanted to see it. The Main Street train station shown here off of Burlington Avenue is a classical revival building with some Beaux Arts stylings. The main door is centered in the building around some pilasters, which are the vertical items next to the door, the symmetrical windows on either side of the main door, and it's a very symmetrical building as well. This is a historic picture from the train tracks, looking at the building there after it was constructed in 1911. I'm not sure the date of this photo, but it was constructed in 1911. It does show here on the floor plan from 1929. It's interesting, it's a little hard to see, but there's a men's waiting room on the left and a women's waiting room on the right. So it's a little bit dated, but that shows a little bit of uniqueness and character at the time with the architecture behind it. So it's a historic building, and it meets a lot of the criteria that we are looking for. It is over 50 years of age. Staff believes it has community value in terms of the train station has led to really a lot of the development in Downers Grove, a lot of the history that you can read in the packet as well about the value. It does meet the classical revival in the Beaux Arts style, and then we believe it's a sense of civic pride. It's central hub of transportation for a lot of the village residents and people visiting. The tree lighting, and there's a lot of activity there. So we believe it meets criteria 6 as well with civic pride. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for ourselves at the petitioner? I will just, again, comment that I'm glad to see the village leading by example when it comes to historic preservation by identifying a village facility that we can't seek to preserve, and I think appropriately so. And the only thing I would add is that, of course, those who spend a lot of time in the train station as commuters will also notice there's another historic event that took place involving the train station. I don't know if it's a source of civic pride, but it's a historical event like the Hindenburg and things like that, where in 1947 there was a Zephyr train accident that happened there that is of some historic significance. And there's a great deal of history revolving around that event and the tremendous efforts of the community that came together to help assist those who were injured in that accident. I won't go into the details of it, but there's a plaque at the train station that actually marks that site as that event on April 3rd of 1947. So with that, questions from the audience? Please, good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Dave Gasson, 5320 Benton Avenue.
I'm Amy Gasson, same address.
This is a little breach of protocol, but rather than us getting up here 3 times for all properties, we simply wanted to come up at this one time and for all 3 properties state our support for them being designated as landmarks.
And at the public hearing, we did get up individually, each of us, for each one, and it got a little ridiculous, so we're sparing you that again. And then I also just want to add that I'm very thankful for the village to kind of, like Mayor Tully mentioned, lead by example on this. And I'm hoping that this sets an example for not only private property owners, but also some of our public property owners, other government entities such as the school districts and the park district as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and that's a fair point, because it is difficult to ask someone to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. So leading by example in this case, I think is tremendously helpful. I'd also be remiss if I didn't join Mr. Popovich's comments about thanking the resident volunteers, including the Friends of the Edwards House, who have assisted with this process. Like, that was part of what we were trying to incite and invigorate with the discussion around the changes to the ordinance, and glad to see members of the community, volunteers, taking in their own time to support an important cause for the entire community. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, Ken Lerner, 4933 Whiffen Place. And now that protocol has been breached, I'll go ahead and express my support as well for all three of the applications. Full disclosure, one of them is from two members of our PDHA board, Mark and Irene. We'll hear about that one in a minute. And but PDHA is happy to support these and thinks that you will do the community a great service if you approve them. And the train station kind of speaks for itself. It's a central, feature of Downers Grove and of obvious historical significance. I wanted to mention that each of these homes that are up for landmarking, in addition to having their own unique stories and historical interest, are also each in significant neighborhoods from a historical perspective, where there are significant concentrations of historical homes, and so we can hope that they will set a good example for their neighborhoods. And lastly, I just want to mention that the process, in addition to preserving these buildings for the future and cementing our place as a community that values historic preservation, each of these, the process of creating the applications for landmarking causes research to be done, and they each of them winds up with interesting stories of the people who live there and their connections to the community, and I think there's even been a couple of connections to other landmark properties that have come up along the way. And so each of these, in addition to preserving the property, sort of adds another chapter to the history of Downers Grove, and it's nice to have that as something in public documentation, that we have more threads in our tapestry of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item, the last item, or the next item? Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Christine Martin, 701 Maple Avenue. I just want to make comment that the landmarking process, which was tedious prior to the ad hoc committee, the landmarking process was great, and going through the application was enjoyable. So it was really interesting to do it. It was easy to do, and it was we had a lot of help from the city too. So from Stan and Rebecca and from Scott, they were so welcoming to us and enthusiastic about it. So I appreciate that very much. And we also, I am part of the Friends of the Edwards House, and we also have some other people waiting in the wings whom we're helping with an application too. So hopefully we should have some more coming soon. So I just want to thank the city and the staff for all your encouragement and your support. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those words. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? We have some more coming. No worries. Good evening, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Kathy Nybel, 5253 Blodgett. I just wanted to say that it was wonderful to see so many groups coming together with the same goal, and a wonderful goal it is, because the decisions that are made today, whether a house is torn down, whether a house goes up, whether a house is preserved, that's our future. That's what our town's going to look like 100 years ago. 100 years from now, 100 years, they're going to look back and say, gee, I'm really glad they saved those houses. I like to think that. So I think what you are doing with these decisions and letting these houses be preserved is the future. So thank you very, very much, even though the houses can't speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Hearing none. none, we'll go to item 7C, please.
Good evening again. This is a historic landmark designation for 1232 Gilbert Avenue. It's on the north side of Gilbert Avenue, adjacent to the Chase, just west of downtown, just a little bit west of Carpenter Street there on Gilbert Avenue. The property in question is a folk Victorian style home. Some of the unique features of this are symmetrical front facade. This picture is probably a little bit lighter. Symmetrical front facade, a front gable roof, some gable ornamentation, which is just right underneath the gable here in a sunburst pattern. Cornice brackets, which are on the post there in the front porch, and then some turned spindle posts. Here's another front picture of the elevation. See stairs coming down the front door. This is a really great example of a folk Victorian home. And there's another picture with a little bit more light on the south facade there facing Gilbert. In terms of the criteria for it, it is built in 1891, so it meets 50 years old. And then we think it's an excellent example of a folk Victorian home under criteria 3. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time as well.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Commissioner Barnett?
Just one broad-based comment. Like my colleagues, I'm sure all of us up here are thankful for folks jumping in and whether it's helping or landmarking their homes. When the Gassens came the first time, we asked for some sort of post-mortem feedback, and we got some, and it was helpful. This process is one which you know, as Christine noted, is a lot easier. We'd like it to be even easier yet. And so if there's any sort of input that any of the current applicants have afterwards, please take a few minutes and write us all a note, because we're trying to make this something that, while it works today and is better today than it was a year ago, that it's even easier 6 months, 8 months, a year down the road. We'd like people to be able to do this just as easy as possible, and the folks that are actually going through it are the best to tell us what those changes are. So I know that my colleagues share that same sentiment. If you guys would take a few minutes, it would help us all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the audience on this item? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, yeah. I'm Irene Hoekstrom and my husband, Mark Bragan.
1232 Gilbert Avenue.
Welcome.
And, maybe just to address Commissioner Barnett's request, I hate to be a Debbie Downer or whatever about this, but the process in general was very easy. The only thing of obtaining the addresses from the township hall, you know, I just assumed it would be a GIS. There'd be GIS capability to do that, but it's still, you know, a hand process to obtain those addresses. So that was the only thing that was a little bit tedious, but otherwise, you know, the forms from the village were very easy to fill out. Wanted to add more?
Yeah, I guess I'd really just like to thank the council for their enthusiastic support of the landmarking within Downers Grove. You know, there's lots of reasons why Downers Grove is such a wonderful place to live, and you know, for us, a big part of it is just the, you know, the architecture, and so trying to save that is wonderful. And I guess irrelevant to the landmarking decision, I would like to say that in this whole process, you know, we've had the opportunity to meet many wonderful people that have become friends, and you know, I've been in Downers Grove now for 35 or so years. And it's really only this last couple of years when we've been working on this that an introvert as myself actually went out and developed a lot of new friends, and friends that I hope we keep for years to come. So I think, you know, it's to bring the community together. I think this is a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Terrific side benefit. And thank you for sharing that comment on the process. It's something we certainly can look at going forward.
Okay. Maybe I'll just add a few of those connections that Ken Lerner mentioned. You know, as we were doing our research for our house for the Centennial home, you know, we saw that W.H. Edwards was the trustee, you know, when the original they were Norwegian immigrants who purchased our house in 1891. And so they were the, W.H. Edwards was the trustee. And then ran into another difficulty in the research where there were all these quitclaim deeds going on in the 1940s. and that included Donald Drew of the Drew House. So we're still trying to figure out what was going on there, but just interesting that that name come up too, that he had our house for $1 at one point, so. So anyway, so thank you.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Other questions or comments from the audience? And hearing none, we'll go to item 7D, as in David.
So the next item, switching from historic preservation to energy conservation, is the adoption of the ICC Energy Conservation Code. This is the 2015 International Energy Conservation Code. The state is required to adopt the international code, and the state then requires us to adopt the international code without any amendments, in essence. The only amendments we've made is just to make it so our administrative section about how we issue permits and fines, et cetera, is our administrative section versus their general generic administrative section. But the proposal that's in front of you is to adopt the current code so that when the state changes to the 2016 or 2017 code, we don't have to come back and modify our approvals in front of you. It'll just be the current ICC code. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you at this time.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Questions from the audience? Very good. 7E.
Is a
please.
motion authorizing an award of contract for Lacey Road reconstruction. Here to present information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have one item tonight. It's a motion requested to award a contract for the Lacey Road reconstruction to Chicagoland Paving Contractors of Lake Zurich, Illinois, in the amount of $549,900. The scope of this project includes the reconstruction of Lacey Road. It's north of Ogden. It's between Ogden and Virginia. This is where we have the supported living facility that is under construction right now. It's shown in yellow on this exhibit. The extent of the project is shown in red here between Ogden and Virginia. It includes replacement of asphalt pavement, sidewalk repair. There's some ribbon curb installation to facilitate drainage in portions of this project. There's some storm sewer replacement and other improvements within the right-of-way. We received 6 bids. Chicagoland Paving was the low bidder, and staff does recommend award of the contract to Chicagoland Paving, who completed the 2014 parking lot reconstruction project for the village, as well as the 2014 patching program. They also completed projects for the communities of Buffalo Grove, Libertyville, Fox Lake, and Barrington. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Commissioner Barnett?
Are we talking to the folks at the SLF?
Yes.
And what I'm getting at is, I hate to have them still doing a bunch of heavy construction right after we're doing paving. We think they're going to, by the time we start, they're going to be finished with the heavy work? Or?
We are coordinating the schedule with them, so we are talking to them, yes, and that's our intent.
Is it the type of thing that we can manage our financial end of it with a little flexibility on timing?
I believe so. That's our intent, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? Questions or comments from the audience? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. The
7F
next
is in Frank.
is this item F is a motion accepting the facility sustainability plan. And here to present information on this item is our Deputy Village Manager, Mike Baker.
Evening, Mr. Baker.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you, Dave. The purpose of this item is to present the facility sustainability plan for Village Council acceptance. What you see on the screen is a concise summary of the plan, and much more extensive background information exists on our website and has been captured as we've gone through the process. This is a process that began in September of last year and included a number of public meetings that involved discussion of the issue, the resources to be committed to supporting this project. A variety of options were considered, and ultimately the plan was developed based on direction provided at the most recent meeting that occurred back in April. Just to briefly summarize, the plan does include a total project budget of $16 million and directs most of those resources to improvements to the police station, which includes an addition of between 11,500 square feet and 13,200 square feet, along with renovation of the existing space. And Village Hall will receive some short-term maintenance needs addressed as part of this plan. As we proceed, we will move into the next stages of design, but at this point, I wanted to provide the opportunity for council to give direction in the form of acceptance. That is all.
Thank you. Understanding that the council has been intimately involved with this process for some time, are there questions or comments at this juncture? Commissioner Barnett?
I just, as we're sitting up on the dais in a first reading, I'll take a moment to reiterate my comments from our last sort of less formal meeting on the subject. I don't think this is a good path for a couple reasons, not the least of which is my interpretations of that last referendum question were probably different than those who see this as the path forward. I don't know, nobody really knows what votes were cast, what the reasoning was, but what I heard loud and clear, I think I heard loud and clear, was that they didn't like the idea of spending that kind of money on public facilities. The previous plan that was overwhelmingly voted down by the public contained about twice as much expense to the average household as this current plan does. And that to me is, one of the things we heard a lot when we were debating the public policy question about facilities prior to the referendum was a call for value. There was a lot of concern that what was going on wasn't providing a real value to the taxpayers, and that's a totally fair concern. I would suggest this one provides less. Whether the old plan was a good one or not, whether it was too complicated or not, I suppose we could keep debating, but the fact is it provided about, if you're talking about a Moneyball kind of a comparison, this is about half the debt for 5% of the value. And so that to me seems like a question that before we get too far down the road, we ought to be asking taxpayers. You're going to pay $60 for this plan, you might have paid $100 for the last one, but you're going to get a whole lot less out of this. You sure you still want us to do that? I don't think that the answer to that referendum was, yeah, go ahead and spend half the debt and do whatever you want. I just don't think that's the case. We're missing, arguably, we're missing opportunities from a cost of money standpoint. We're missing opportunities as it relates to intergovernmental agreements, things like the next item on the agenda. And we're spending a ton of money to end up with very little to show for it. That's not to diminish the value of the police station. I recognize that. But this is still a big new debt burden on every resident in town. And I'm not sure that that's really what people understood their messaging to be in the last referendum. So I oppose this path. I understand from our last meeting I'm in the minority, but I thought it was appropriate, Mayor, to take this moment on the dais as a first reading element and make sure the record was clear.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White.
First, let's clarify some math here. At the last proposal, the Ogden Avenue plan was $52 million. This is 14 to 15 million. It's not half, it's a third. Secondly, there was $8 million in expenses needed just to keep the current police station operating. So really, we're really spending very, very little more money to fill in all of the ovals for the police deficiencies. And it's interesting that people will criticize this plan and not offer any additional plan of their own. So that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very pleased. I want to thank staff for the work on this plan. I concur with Commissioner White pointed out a good point that a plan with a total budget of $16 million and with which was set by council and a project that looks like it's going to come in under that before we even get down to specific drawings. And I think council or the staff has heard at the last meeting, at least from me, the continued challenge to find ways to save costs, save on cost. We have had just a continued focus on doing things as efficiently and effectively as possible. And I think that this plan is really a first step in addressing an important issue for the community and making sure that our police and that group of public safety personnel have the facilities that they need to continue to provide the, really top-notch service that they do to the community. I think it's been noted a number of times that our police station has been highly rated, it's been highly recognized as a top police department by folks outside of the village, and recognized as an excellent service provider by our own residents. So I think that it's important that we have the appropriate facilities, and I appreciate the focus of this council on doing that in an economical and an efficient manner, and using taxpayer resources in a way to provide that value and provide that important service, but also do that in a way that doesn't burden the taxpayers. I think it is notable. This plan is a third of the cost of the plan that was previously discussed. And I think provides a great deal of value to the taxpayers. I think it provides a great deal of value to our police department. And I'm just very excited we're moving forward to find a little bit more, to move to the next stage of drawings and information that we'll be able to gather. So I'm very excited about this. I want to thank the staff and the architect for their work, and challenge them to continue to find those ways that we can continue to provide the services, provide the facility that we want to provide, but do it in even a more cost-effective way, and find ways that we can to reduce cost where possible, where it still allows us to provide the facility, the quality facility that we're desiring. Thanks.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't want to repeat what Commissioner White or Commissioner Olson said, but basically, it wasn't a complex referendum question. It was, do you want to spend that much money? And the plan was to move it out on Ogden Avenue, and, are we going to get a new police station? I think the residents made that very clear. They didn't want to spend that kind of money, but they knew something had to be done for a good police station to keep up our top-notch police services, and they didn't want it out on Ogden Avenue. So we managed to bring it back here. It is good value. For example, I'll go back several years when we built Fire Station 2. That was just under $10 million several years ago, and a lot of that is garage space, because you have to park the truck somewhere. But there's less garage space needed for the police department. There's more of office type space that's needed, and updating. So I think it is an excellent value, and I think we did it. I think we're doing a good job in looking at costs and providing excellent services now and in the future. So I totally support moving ahead with the plan the way it is presented here now. Thank you.
Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't intending to go down this particular rabbit hole, but since it was brought up, the top line cost, 52 million versus 16, yes, you're right, it's roughly a third. But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Barnett, but I think what he was referring to was the expected bond issuance. And according to the December 9th, 2014 facilities update, the bond issuance that was to come along with that plan was $31.5 million. It's not quite 50%, but it's a lot closer to 50 than it is 1/3. All of that said, this plan has its warts, like any plan does, but I think it's the best that we can get at the moment. It's coming in under budget. My biggest concern is, number one, making sure that we have a police station that is workable for the top-notch police department, and that it will be sufficient for the future. I'm concerned to make sure that we have a focus that makes sure that we're not ending up spending twice. I want to get this right now and get it done correctly. I think one of the unfortunate unintended consequences, as Commissioner Barnett alluded to, is the next item on our first reading agenda. as I said, it's unintended, but because we were no longer seeking partnership opportunities that were plainly right in front of us, we are no longer going to be doing our own emergency dispatching. It's unfortunate because we were the lowest cost provider, we were the most effective, but here we are. So, like I said, it has its warts, but I'm willing to go ahead and support it, given it's the best that we can obtain now. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Fatima?
I just want to say I love the plan, and I cannot wait to support it. Can't wait to see it go forward. That's it. I don't want to argue about it anymore.
Thank you. I hadn't planned on saying anything, but now I feel compelled to. First, I don't know if I would necessarily agree that there's any connection between the next item and this item, but I don't think that's either here or there. I don't think one is, it's not a res ipsa loquitur type of situation, in my opinion, but that goes far beyond the point at hand. This is a reasonable compromise. I'm going to repeat what I said a couple weeks ago when we last talked about this in the committee room. I joined this council in May of 2001, and we have been wrestling with this since at least then. At least 3 times, maybe more, have we tried to solve this issue. And it has not gotten, the problem has not gotten any less severe since 2001, and the costs have not gone down since 2001. In the time it's taken, the 15 years that it's taken to address this issue, costs have only gone in one direction. It is time to fix this problem and move forward. It's been derailed multiple times for various reasons, and I am less about interpreting tea leaves than I am about solving this issue and moving on in a reasonable way. I don't think we solve it at all costs. I don't think we solve it necessarily has to be perfect, but I think we need to solve it and move on. And I think what we have before us is a reasonable compromise. Having been at this since 2001, I've seen multiple councils voice their opinions on multiple proposals. I don't believe there was one that had unanimous support. There was always someone in the minority who didn't like the proposal. There was always someone in the community who didn't like that proposal. There will be someone against every single proposal put forward, but I'm not going to sit here for another 15 years while we wrestle with this issue. We need to solve this and move on. We owe it to the community. We owe it to our police department. At some point in time, we will pay dearly for having fiddled. So I'm supportive of moving this on, moving forward with this, because it is a reasonable compromise. And let me say that again, it is a compromise. Not everybody up here got everything they wanted. I certainly didn't. I know my colleagues didn't either. But this is a reasonable compromise that first and foremost, in a reasonable fashion, achieves the needs of our police department in terms of long-term excellent service for this community. The process was an interesting one. It's been interesting since May of 2001. What we have before us now is a new idea. This is not an idea that in its exact form was previously considered. It came about because different people asked questions, poked and prodded, had their own views, and ultimately something came up that hadn't exactly been considered before. It is a consensus result. It solves the police department's needs. It does not, as I said before, in my opinion, solve any of the village hall needs. Zero. It kicks that issue down the road. So we will be revisiting that issue, but we need to move forward with the police station. There's no question about it. The other thing that gives me reason to be okay with this and to support it is that it does leave options open for the Village Hall campus. If this were a solution that somehow prevented us from creative, innovative, including partnerships involving the Village Hall campus, I would be more reluctant, but it doesn't. And why doesn't it? Because it doesn't really change the footprint that we're currently dealing with in terms of the police station. So we're no worse off going forward with this plan than we would be otherwise. And I am, as I've said before, a very vocal advocate of looking at creative solutions for the Village Hall challenge, which remains, because this does nothing to solve it. And I think it leaves open options, and I was somewhat encouraged by the comments I heard last time that there may be innovative approaches with respect to the Village Hall solution that may include partnerships, consolidation, and other things that may be new ideas that we hadn't previously considered. So with that, while this is not perfect, it is a reasonable compromise, and I'm willing to support it. Questions from members of the audience?
Mayor, before you go on.
Sure.
Mayor, you characterized that thing well, and I appreciate that. It is a compromise, to be sure. And I'm not suggesting anything otherwise, but Commissioner White, Commissioner Olson want to focus on math. It's important to do so accurately. And as Greg noted, this is not a 52 million versus 16 proposition. It is a, I thought, focus on trying to find a way to save the taxpayer, be as low a burden on our taxpayers as possible. We certainly know the condition of our taxpayers. They are hammered daily. This is a $55 a year versus a $100 a year proposition to our taxpayers. There are lots of other sources of revenue, lots of other pieces of plan we won't rehash, but before we sit here and think, oh my goodness, thank goodness we didn't spend 52 million, now we're only spending 16, look at the great job we've done for our taxpayers. We are still adding a new burden every year to them. And it is about $50 a year difference. Mayor, you're right, this doesn't fix all our needs. You talked about the village hall. It also doesn't provide a new fire station. It also doesn't increase the property tax base. It also doesn't increase downtown residential density. It also doesn't increase the sales tax base. It also doesn't deal with a long-held, difficult EPA cleanup site. It also doesn't improve EMS response times. It also doesn't take our vehicle maintenance management out of downtown. It also doesn't reduce the size of the government footprint in downtown, and it doesn't give us an opportunity to improve social services. Those are things it also does not do for $50. And I get it. I'm going to lose this argument, but it's important to characterize this. We were largely led down a road of a big amorphous $52 million number, and we're kind of getting an amorphous $16 million number. I think it's important that people actually pay attention to the details behind those numbers. Commissioner Waldeck, you said that people told us not to put it on Ogden Avenue. I didn't see that in the wording of the referendum. I missed it. I didn't see the wording referendum where it said, make sure you put the police station downtown. So this is a compromise, Mayor, and you're right. I'm not arguing with you. But I think it's important that some of these elements of the decision-making process, as well as the resultant plan, are appropriately characterized, because it's way too simple and way too uninformative, little Bushism there, to just paint this as 16 million versus 52 million, all of a sudden we're solving something. We're going to be right back at this in 3 years, looking for another 16 or 20 million dollars. That's the village hall thing. Now, the mayor's right, we'll be all looking real hard to find opportunities that are going to be creative, but those were explored last time and they were part of that last plan. So there will be some new situation in front of us not too far down the road, probably not long after this police work is completed. We'll be talking about trying to figure out how to solve Village Hall. And that won't be free, which will start to even chip away at that differential even further. Whatever it is, it won't be free. It'll be creative, to be sure. I know everybody will be doing their best to minimize the cost. It will not be free. So all of a sudden, that $50 a month differential is even less. So obviously, once this thing's decided and we're moving forward, I'll be as supportive as I can of every decision about the process once started down. But in this point in time where we're deciding to start or not, I'm going to have to stay in the opposition. Thanks, Mayor.
Very quick point.
Commissioner White.
Okay. I stand by the $52 million number because the $52 million number included what might be described as highly optimistic sources of funding, which very likely would have ended up being tax dollars. So to say that the $52 million plan was only going to cost $32 million, where's the $20 million that Mr. Barnett's talking about? That's the difference. It is 52 versus 14 or 15, and I'll stand by that point. And if anybody, and everybody's had an option to propose a less expensive option to fill all the ovals of the police deficiencies. If Mr. Barnett has a less expensive option to solve the police needs, please speak up now and don't complain about it later. Thank you.
If you don't know where that was, you should read the report.
Well,
That funding was there, Bill.
Gentlemen, please.
Well, Mayor, if Commissioner Barnett doesn't know where the $22 million is, Commissioner White needs to know where the $20 million is. It was a very comprehensive report put forward. And yes, it was like many things, just like the $16 million. It was an estimate and a best guess. That to suggest that that was somehow not reasonably considered is just, it's criticism that is unwarranted and frankly smacks of something other than attention to details, which is supposedly what we're up here doing.
Well, this is why, with all due respect, gentlemen, I'm trying to unhinge this from two things. One, from trying to interpret tea leaves and what something else was, but instead doing what we should do, which is evaluating this proposal on its own merits and what's before us. And as I said before, I think unhinging this from the Village Hall discussion, if it allows us to go forward and finally solve a long overdue problem in a reasonable fashion, not perfect fashion by no stretch, but a reasonable fashion that a consensus of this council can get behind and actually deliver, then I'm in support of it. And I choose not to question prior decisions or future decisions, other than to point out that, yes, we will need to address the Village Hall challenge down the road. And that may come in one form, it may not come in another form. They say that nobody knows how many licks it takes to get the center of a Tootsie Pop. No one will ever know whether the promise of the old plan would have panned out or not. We won't know. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. Some were more optimistic than others. We also don't know what the solution will be to the Village Hall challenge. It could be what was described, it may not, it could be something else. But what I do want to do is weigh this proposal on its own merits, get about the business of solving this problem and moving forward in a reasonable fashion, and I think this is reasonable enough. And with that, since I didn't think there were any questions in the audience, we'll go to item 7G, please.
This is the last item on tonight's first reading agenda. It is a motion that directs staff to pursue membership in DuPage Public Safety Communications, also known as DUCOM. DUCOM is an intergovernmental agency that was formed in 1975. It provides emergency dispatching services to 45 public safety agencies in DuPage County. Now, membership in DUCOM is being pursued for several reasons, which will be summarized here on this next slide. I won't read them all, but the highlights sound a lot like Mayor Tully's 3 C's speech, which may be brought up at some point tonight, about consolidation, collaboration, and cooperation. This membership is pursued because it maintains service levels. Our Village Operations Center that we've enjoyed for several decades provides exceptional service levels and performance that exceeds national performance standards. I'm proud to announce that DUCOM, after our due diligence review, also provides performance that exceeds national performance standards. This membership would be consistent with consolidation efforts that are happening here at the Village, throughout DuPage County, and the state of Illinois. In fact, it's consistent with the state law that was passed in 2015 requiring consolidation of dispatch centers in every county, including DuPage County. As it relates to the item we just talked about, this project and ultimate membership with DUCOM would provide us the opportunity to reduce the size and the cost of the planned improvements to the police station. So you can see there are many reasons that this membership would be pursued. This project should take a little over a year to complete. There will be a 6-month period of very detailed analysis of services that were provided traditionally here by the Village of Downers Grove and comparing those to those provided by DUCOM. At that point, 6 months into the project or so, the Village Council will have the opportunity to review the service levels, any service level differences, and select the services that will continue to be provided here by the Village. The next 6 months of this 12-month project will be for the actual transfer of operations. There's a lot of detail provided in the staff report, and it's important to note that the council will see this item again a couple times in the next 6 months. The next step is actually consideration of the actual intergovernmental agreement with DUCOM. We expect that to be before you in June or July. At this point, I'm going to hand it over to the mayor, but at any point tonight, staff is happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Just to add a little more context to this, and I'll go back to dating myself by saying that when I joined the council in 2001, we had been looking at regional solutions for various things that this village does in a variety of ways. One of the first that we looked at was, rather than having our own SWAT team here in Downers Grove, which we did at the time, we moved to a regional solution known as FIAT, which is a countywide SWAT team type of unit, because it made sense for a number of different reasons. And it was not without some controversy, having given up something we had here locally that everyone enjoyed. But it just made sense, and as we're seeing more and more, certainly over the last 15 years, more regional solutions in a number of different ways. We've led by example with our own partnerships here, and seeing where cooperation, consolidation, and communication can reduce the size of government, reduce the footprint of government in the sense that there are not as many units of government or as many people doing the same thing, but a broader solution that can be done in a more efficient manner. Looking at the potentiality of taking our dispatch to a regional solution like DUCOM is something we've been looking at as a village since as long as I can remember. there were various reasons why it didn't make sense along the way. So some might ask, well, why now? And there's just a number of things that aligned all at the same time. Number one, we've been looking at it for a long time. It was something that if it made sense, we had pretty much considered very seriously doing anyway. Number two, we had in our current long-range plan, one of our high priority action items was to effectuate a major consolidation if one could be identified that made sense. So that was one of the things that we asked staff to actually look at. We have done a number of different very creative, innovative things with dispatch, such as partnering with Westmont, looking at some other things. We've explored some other ways to improve that relationship, to expand that relationship. So this isn't something that was the only option out there. We've looked at a number of different things to see what would make sense both currently and down the road. Speaking of down the road, the world has changed since 2001 for sure. But just a couple things the village manager mentioned in terms of additional incentives and encouragement, I'll use that word, at both the county level and the state level to pursue paths like this is stronger now today than it ever has been before. Whether it's the County Chairman's Act program or it's the Lieutenant Governor's Consolidation program, the world is all about consolidation, cooperation, and communication, wherever it makes sense to do so. And we've studied this pretty hard and looked at various options, not just today, but long-term options. Not just where are we going to be in 2016, where are we going to be in 2026, where are we going to be in 2036. And it's pretty clear that eventually this is something that everybody is moving towards. And the timing was prescient because we're clearly looking at a major facility project right now, and it was something that we were going to have to consider because if we're going to invest in the facility, our long-term participation in this activity at either a local or regional level is something we had to look at very closely. So those are the things that just the stars aligned and caused this decision to be looked at very seriously right now. DUCOM has changed over time. Other external and internal cost factors have changed. Quite candidly, it just makes sense that this is the move. Now is the time to make the move. So I just share that from a little bit of more historical perspective for my colleagues, only because I recall having this conversation multiple times over the time that I've been here, and just things have just changed to where now it makes sense for a long-term solution for our community. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. I think from my perspective, you know, I appreciate what Manager Fieldman, his introduction, and Mayor Tully, your introduction as well. I just wanted to reemphasize one point, which was as this was discussed and updated, and you know, we received this item here. My main question and my main concern is ensuring that we have the quality of service that residents have come to expect. I mean, our dispatch center is a high-quality dispatch center, and it provides excellent service to residents when they call. You know, dispatch is talking to people in situations that are life-threatening, situations that are where minutes and even seconds matter. And so making sure that as we're looking at some new options, that we're not compromising public safety. And just in speaking with Manager Fieldman and our staff, I'm very confident that that is the case, and that is the case that we are going to be able to effectuate this consolidation, which is good long-term for a number of reasons that have already been outlined, and makes sense from a long-term perspective. But it also, we're going to preserve that service that people expect, because this is service that we never want to have to call upon, but when we need to call upon it, it is really important that it is there and that it is working well. And so I'm very confident that we'll be able to move through this process with maintaining that level of service. So I just wanted to appreciate the work that our Staff Manager Fieldman, but also staff throughout the organization, our two chiefs, our current VOC manager, and others have done to ensure that this works for our community, because the last thing we would want, whether it's in the transition or in the long-term solution, would be to have any sort of lapse in service. That would be a major issue, and I'm confident that that won't happen, and that we can expect the great service we've come to know.
Thanks. And just to pick up on that, because it bears repeating, the two major factors, and the first one being a paramount concern in all the years that we've looked at a potential regional solution, has been public safety first and foremost. There's no question about it. We wouldn't be talking about this if we didn't think that public safety standards were going to be maintained. And the other factor being cost. You can maintain the same public safety standards at the same or lower cost or a more efficient environment, then that makes it attractive. And those stars have aligned. The other thing I was remiss in not saying is, in no way, shape, or form does this have any kind of comment on the quality of our dispatch folks here in Downers Grove. I mean, they are terrific. That's not the issue at all. It's just this is the way of the world, and where it makes good sense, as I believe it does, it's something that I think we're obligated to pursue. I remember when we moved to Fiat, the Fiat solution from the local SWAT team, there was some concern about, well, would there be a team there if there's an active shooter at one of our local schools, if we go to a Fiat model instead of a local model? People are going to have those questions, but that all worked out very well because staff was, first of all, wouldn't even recommend it unless they were confident that those concerns would be addressed, and they're also very good at delivering upon them. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing up the Fiat, which is something that worked. But over the years, we've pursued a lot of, as you had mentioned, we pursued a lot of opportunities, and you don't hear about them because they didn't pan out. Not all of those consolidations worked the best for us, and we've always had time to analyze them and to negotiate as it were, and if it works out, it works. If it doesn't, we didn't pursue it. This is a little different. I can't say that, that things are going to improve. I can't say that they're going to get worse. I can't say that they're going to be the same. We just don't know. Will we be as safe, less safe, just as safe? Is this going to save money? Is it going to cost us more money in the long run? I don't know. But the point, and we do, we have an excellent services now. We don't know what's going to happen in the future if we move to DUCOM. But there's, the village manager mentioned the 3 Cs. The mayor talks about it. There's an additional letter in there. It's called an M. It's called a mandate. We can't maintain our VOC the way it is now. We are mandated to make a change. And so we don't have the opportunity to make all that analysis. All we can do is analyze what we can and make the best choice out of the limited choices. For example, moving to Addison or going to DUCOM. And hopefully pursuing, having staff pursue a DUCOM. We have provided excellent service, and we can set an example, and we can possibly improve the what's going on at DUCOM. Hopefully, it'll be a positive effect. But, this isn't something that we thought up and it would save money and we're just going to make this move. There's a mandated portion of this that we have to make a choice and we have to make a move. And so hopefully with staff working very hard, we can maintain our safety. We can, possibly reduce costs. That's a goal. And we can try to see to it that our current staff that will be affected will be treated appropriately, that we care about them. And so we ask staff to pursue a DUCOM. But let's not forget, there's an element of M in here, not just 3 Cs and an M. So we will pursue. Thank you.
Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I try to make it a point to approach all decisions by removing the anecdotal and relying on data, but this one's a little harder for me. As was said earlier, seconds count when you're talking about emergency response. And I know that about as well as anybody. On September 27th, 1992, early in the morning, in a Chicago suburb not all that far from here, my dad suffered a heart attack. And he flatlined in the ambulance, and by the time they got him to the hospital, he was gone. Now, who knows if a few more seconds would have made the difference, but it might for one resident or another, whether you're here in Downers Grove or elsewhere in the county. So simply put, this is not an area of service where I'm willing to live with a reduction in service level. Bill talked about mandates, and I think that's another important topic. Government consolidation is a means and not an end. When a unit of government ceases to provide a service or ceases to be entirely, it should be because we're seeking to provide our residents more value for their dollar, focusing on effectiveness in a couple of forms: service delivery and cost. And now we expect that DUCOM will result in the same service level to our residents. Hopefully it will improve along the way. But we also believe that at least in the short term, that our cost for 911 dispatch is going to go up. Hopefully that will also be reduced as time goes by. And I hope that leaders in Springfield and in Wheaton take note that these consolidation efforts, government consolidation is a good means to this end, but it's forcing on us a decision to close what has been the most effective and lowest cost provider of emergency dispatch services. This isn't the kind of solution that the market would normally provide. So I hope that future government consolidation efforts will be carefully studied and planned to ensure that we indeed provide more efficient and more effective delivery of services to our residents. Thanks, Mayor.
Commissioner White?
Very briefly, and listening to Commissioner Waldeck and Commissioner Jose, I do want to express my personal philosophy about consolidation, which is that some consolidations are good, some consolidations are bad, and you got to dig into the details to tell which are which. That consolidation per se, for the sake of consolidation itself, is not a goal that we should pursue. To follow up a little bit on what Commissioner Waldeck said, we're under some constraints here. Downers Grove serves two communities, Downers Grove and Westmont. And the pressure, and the outside political pressure to consolidate is enormous. And our ability to maintain, if we could keep the status quo, that might be the best option, but I don't think that's an option we're going to have in front of us. That the cost to provide the level of service to the two communities, or perhaps just to ourselves, is going to increase rapidly unless we find partners. And I'm very confident with everything I've heard that the village staff is making the right recommendation with who our partners should be. So with that, I'm prepared to move forward. I totally concur with Commissioner Jose's concern that we not just rush into consolidation without taking a very hard look as to whether or not it's going to decrease the very real level of service that we all need and deserve.
Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. The maintained level of service aspect up there, there are a couple of levels of service that I'd like to have detailed at some point for us, for the public, that goes beyond, just sort of the 911 dispatch portion. There are, I think, if I understand this correctly, there are certain procedures that we use, particularly as it relates to fire, that may likely be different. I'd like some kind of characterization and quantification of what those are, and folks on our team telling us why we do it differently today, and what, because obviously we think there's a benefit there. There are also sort of village integration aspects of it that I'm a little bit afraid of missing. We have a facility over there right now that is generally accessible 24 hours a day because there's people there. And those people aren't going to be there. And so I don't know how often that's accessed. I don't know if it's one person shows up a month there, or if it's most weekends, half a dozen folks, but I'd like to understand what service we're providing with that, and understand what we think the costs of maintaining that aspect of the service that we're currently delivering via our VOC group would be. And then any kind of integration that we have with Public Works. We have, as a community for a long time, I'm sure Mayor probably dates back prior to 2001, put a lot of work, real work, effort, real work technology, real work purchased equipment, real work planning into integration of not only 911 with a fire call or 911 with a police call, but the opportunity to extend that to other things such as public works. And so I'm kind of assuming that that won't be part of what DUCOM provides us. And so understanding what that service is and what kind of opportunities we might have to back that up and the costs associated with it are things I'd like to understand too. We're going to try to put the best construction on this, I'm sure. But we are here not really because we wanted to be here. We're here because state mandates and a series of events have put us into a position where this is our best, seemingly best alternative of a very short list. And I'm concerned that some of those service levels that residents have come to expect that aren't necessarily the same as an ambulance call are going to get left by the wayside or cost us a lot to maintain. So I'd like a really good, clear understanding of what all that is as we go forward with this evaluation.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments from the council? Questions or comments from members of the audience? More to come.
Thank you, Mayor. That ends tonight's first reading agenda.
Thank you. That brings us to item 8, Mayor's report. A few things I want to report out. I hate to use his name synonymously with history, but recently one of our most storied and esteemed citizens, John Mokel, celebrated his 90th birthday. And if you wonder why am I singling out a gentleman with the last name of Mokel, the Mokel family in many respects is synonymous with the history of Downers Grove. It goes all the way back to Charles Mokel, who was the master of the Masonic Temple back in the day, served 2 terms as village president, and of course the Mokel family was involved in running one of the longest continuously operating businesses in the downtown, Mokel Hardware. I believe it was over 100 years in continuous operation. And you may also notice from time to time that there happens to be a street here in Downers Grove that's named Mokel Drive. So just wanted to congratulate and wish John Mokel a very happy 90th birthday on achieving that milestone for a living historic family here in our town. Next item I want to turn to is reminding everybody that the Cupcake Classic 5K is coming up on May 22nd. This year it's going to be over by Blackstone Drive and 67th Street by McCullum Park. Of course, this is what was formerly known as the Run for Hope or Noah's Hope 5K, named after Noah Van Houten. And the event is designed to raise funds to research and combat the decimating Batten's disease, which struck our community very recently this year. So if you are interested in that event, information can be found on, you just Google Cupcake Classic Downers Grove 2016, you'll find it. It's again on Sunday, May 22nd. I'm trying to see when the race starts, but I'm sure it's around 8 o'clock. Next, I wanted to mention, if someone else doesn't, that the Village of Downers Grove is having a Public Works open house on May 20th. Rain or shine, that will be Friday, May 20th from 3 o'clock till 7 p.m. at the Public Works facility located at 5101 Walnut Avenue. This is an annual favorite. When the doors open up and all the big trucks are available, anybody who used to like Tonka trucks when they were young, this is an opportunity to get on the real thing and sometimes sit in the cab. There's lots of fun for kids. It's a real family event. And adults can even enter a drawing to win either a rain barrel or a treat. So it's a good event. It's very popular every year, and looking forward to seeing lots of Downers Grove families there. And last, and on a more somber note, I want to remind the community again that on May 16th at 1 o'clock at First Presbyterian Church, 339 4th Street in Downers Grove, will be the annual Officer Richard J. Barth Memorial Ceremony. For those who don't know, the Downers Grove Police Department holds this annual memorial service during National Law Enforcement Week to remember fallen officers, in particular the only Downers Grove police officer who was killed in the line of duty, Officer Richard J. Barth. Members of his family attend. It is an extremely moving ceremony for anyone who hasn't attended. Officer Barth lost his life when he was killed in the line of duty by 2 youths in Hooper Hollows Park on March 18th, 1974. And we celebrate his life and his sacrifice, remember his sacrifice every year, and also thank our stars that he remains the only officer of Downers Grove Police Department to be killed in the line of duty. If you haven't had an opportunity to attend the ceremony, I would highly recommend it. It is truly moving. And with that, I will move on to the manager's report, which is item 9, please.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. We do have one item on tonight's manager's report, and it is a long-range plan update, specifically focusing on our priority action items and our work plan. In September of 2015, as part of the long-range plan, the Village Council established 13 priority action items and a 20-month work plan. Well, believe it or not, from a calendar basis, we are halfway through that work plan. We're 10 months into that 20-month work plan. Some good news, and the good news is that our work is progressing nearly exactly as planned. We're making progress on all the items that we had planned to make progress on according to that work plan. However, like every planning document, it makes sense to take a look to see if we should update it, make any changes or amendments to it. I keep in contact with each and every council member on the status of all these items on a regular basis, and based on recent discussions with some council members, a few changes to this work plan are proposed for the second half of this work plan, and these changes are shown in your materials available online. To summarize the proposed changes, 3 items that now show up on the work plan would be deferred: the resident survey, the creation of business-friendly metrics, and a relook at our building permit process at the council level. A note about 2 of those items: the business-friendly metrics and the building permit process are always being worked on at the staff level to make sure we provide exceptional services in a timely manner. We're happy to report that we continue to make improvements in those areas. With those items deferred, we would make 4 changes to the work plan. The first is the scope of one of the existing projects would be expanded. The item "Consider changes to the stormwater utility," we already have received council direction that we should prepare referendum questions for the upcoming November election and engage in an extensive public education campaign leading up to the election. Next change, the item "Execute one major consolidation effort" would now be updated to reflect the project we just talked about, the dispatch consolidation and membership in DUCOM, and it would follow that 12 to 14-month timeline. 2 items would be added to the work plan. First, the creation and consideration of a food truck ordinance that would allow certain food truck operations in specified places, locations, and times as to be determined by the Village Council, and to host what's referred to as a super retreat, which is the gathering of all overlapping local governments that serve Downers Grove for the opportunity for elected official communication directly and communication with the shared constituency. These changes, as proposed, are all shown on the materials in a proposed work plan. We're happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions from members of the council. As the manager mentioned, we've all been in conversation with you on this topic before tonight. Okay, so we're all well informed.
No.
Oh, Commissioner Waldeck wants to add something.
Okay.
Please.
Well, okay, we're talking about adding food trucks, and I don't know what the rush is there. I have my own opinions about it, but I presented it to some of the business partners, and I think we need to wait to hear from them, the economic development. And downtown management seemed to be somewhat in favor, but there's always a concern about how it affects the brick and mortar. So I think before staff and we start getting involved in this, I think we need some feedback from the business community, just tossing the subject out there and finding out if there's an interest from them. The survey, I think that was the other one that was going to be added.
The retreat.
I'm sorry, what was it?
The retreat.
Oh, the retreat, yeah. I think we have the referendum coming up on stormwater in November. I don't know if we need to, if there's something else that we should be doing other than having a kind of a mini total community development for, which is something we did. We had TCD3, we invited the public in, and they set some priorities, and we also had meetings with the other entities. And I'm wondering if that's something that really needs to be pursued at this point. And if nobody else has anything, I'd like to pursue an additional one. One item I'd like to pursue, especially with elections coming up, is and it would involve mostly the council, would be looking at our ethics ordinance. I think it's something that was passed years ago. I think it has many flaws. For example, shortly after it was passed, I ran it by and paid at my own expense an attorney to look at it. And they had concerns that if challenged, it would be found unconstitutional. It violates the Equal Protection Clause. And since that time, there's also been a lot of legislation on campaign finances. So I think we need to look at it from that point. Also, there's the transparency. I always had a problem with the transparency, the idea of closing accounts, which is part of the equal protection and campaign financing portion. But when campaign accounts are open, the public has opportunities to examine it. And when you close accounts, you can do things that aren't transparent. And so I think we need to look at that. Also, it puts one of our high staff members, one of our employees, in a tough situation, being named ethics officer. The village attorney has been named ethics officer. And when you report to 7 people and you have 7 bosses and 4 of them, things can get a bit sketchy, and I think there's a better way to handle that. So I'm not introducing this as new business tonight. I'm just throwing this out there. It's definitely going to take more than 4 hours. I don't know how much staff time it would take other than preparing documents for council discussion, because it's really asks for a lot of action and thought, mostly thought, on the part of the council. So that's something I'd like to bring up and suggest it as a some priority item. Now, what kind of a priority? If you don't want to look at it at all, or a low priority, we can discuss that. But that's something I'd like to bring forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just in 3 observations to follow on what you said, which I think will be helpful. One, the food truck ordinance is one that actually has been discussed with Chamber 630 as well as representatives of the business community. And it's, as currently envisioned, a pilot program that would be narrowly tailored to certain segments of the community to kind of see how it works. It should not take a lot of time because these ordinances exist in other communities all over the country, and we're not creating something from scratch. But the idea is to put it in a place where there are some immediate businesses that could benefit from it, so they're asking for it. The Chamber's aware of it, and yet it would not be a comprehensive every street in the village, so a lot of the other issues that might be potentially implicated by a village-wide food truck ordinance would not arise. The idea is to put it in place to address some immediate requests from some of our businesses in a way that wouldn't incur some of the concerns of other businesses, and then to get some real-world experience with the practice so that we can then evaluate whether it's a good idea, expand it, or do something different. Should not take a lot of time, once again, because there are ordinances that exist in many communities that can be adapted pretty easily to Downers Grove. And again, I'm not arguing for or against it, just simply adding that additional context. Likewise, with the super retreat, to be clear, the concept is not to have a TCD3 or a TCD2 type of gathering, but something that would be, as I understand the proposal, I won't speak for who put it forward. Many years ago, there was a meeting of just largely the taxing bodies within Downers Grove that have coterminous constituencies. And the idea was to, largely among the elected officials, have a much better appreciation, talking about cooperation and communication, have a much better understanding of everyone's current objectives, their challenges, and what they're doing about it. And one of the things that came out of that was a much better understanding of what other elected and taxing bodies are doing, an appreciation of some very shared challenges and innovative ideas on how to work better together, communicate better together at an elected official level in order to better serve the overall community. It was designed to occur on a repeating basis, but because of the influx and distraction of other things, it didn't occur for a long, long time. So the idea, as I understand it, is to revisit that. And the third thing I'll mention is what's currently been proposed by staff, I think, is once again what I would call a compromise and consensus proposal. There are some things I would like to take off of here that are on here. As far as I'm concerned, we could put off the referendum for a while, but since that's the consensus to do one, I want to do it right. I share some of your concerns about what I've always called really a campaign finance ordinance, not an ethics ordinance, but I don't think that's a high priority action item right now, and so while I share some of your concerns, I don't think it's something that I would get behind pursuing right now. Again, out of a compromise, because there are other things that I think have a more pressing need. But I just wanted to provide that context. I think all of these are kind of an amalgam of everyone's different views. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. Could we add the ethics ordinance that Commissioner Waldeck proposed in addition to these other two things that are proposed to be added?
Well, the final thing I didn't say is we're actually trying to streamline the work plan for staff so they can get things done. What we don't want to do is have them doing a lot of things not well.
Which is why I asked the question.
So, I haven't said this before in my career. I am now concerned with the workload and the type of work we're doing that we are running into staff capacity issues. Just in the third quarter, according to the proposed work plan, here's what we'll be working on. The new police station addition and renovation, a review of downtown planning and zoning, an update to the comprehensive plan, the preparation of the public education and initiatives for the referendum regarding stormwater, the transition to DUCOM, a review of the sign ordinance, partnerships to address human services issues, a food truck ordinance, and a super retreat.
And that's in addition to the day-to-day operations.
That is absolutely in addition to just keeping all the other services up and running. So I think, frankly, we're at or exceeding capacity right now. And if we were directed to add something else, I would come back to you with mid-year budget proposals to add staff and at pretty high levels in the organization to accomplish.
Sure. And that being said, though, of course, if something is finished and the capacity can be reallocated, staff always will then turn to the next project. That's why we have a list.
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Philbin's recent comments are a nice segue into my point when I talk about how I envision the super retreat. We're working on this. It's to, in my opinion, the primary goal is to build a rapport between the elected officials of the various bodies that exist. This council may initiate it, but it's to be a meeting of equals. That the elected, so that we aren't running the meeting. This village council would not run the meeting. We would meet with co-equal elected officials of our side-by-side units of government that overlap our community. One goal I would have would be to discuss questions regarding the ownership of decisions. And I'll bring up an example last fall about the electronic message board signs at the high schools. I think there was a sense at District 99 that could be resolved largely at a staff level, and the council would go along with the staff recommendations. I think this council saw it. I see it as a council decision. I think it's important that the various bodies understand what types of decisions rest with the elected officials within the purview of an organization versus with staff of a given organization. That seems to me to be a condition precedent to having meaningful discussions regarding consolidation, collaboration, and cooperation. That if we try to work with a fellow unit of the government, we want to know, hypothetically, at District 58, would a particular type of cooperation occur at the staff level or require board action? And, the same thing with the Park District or the township or any of the other organizations. So partial discussion of those questions, and also to strengthen the personal relationships between the elected officials of this board and the elected officials of all the other boards. Again, I see that as being an important foundation if we are to have effective communication, collaboration, and consolidation. I'd like us to have a shared discussion of economic development. There's some interesting, I remember speaking with Michael Casa about this several months ago, about whether the school district should be involved in helping support the EDC. And I explained to him that because of the tax cap legislation, growing the assessed value doesn't really help their budget. A larger assessed, because the tax cap is imposed on the levy, not upon the assessed value. So for a school district to fund the EDC has very little benefit to them. There are exceptions, and those exceptions needed to be ferreted out, so we can understand that. I'd like to see a discussion of philosophy regarding capital projects, so that we can have a community-wide open discussion of what the community wants, so that the library and the school districts and this board with the village hall, a larger discussion of a shared philosophy of governance. And finally, there's a lot for one thing, is that hopefully this meeting, this type of retreat, both the preparation for it and follow-on afterwards, will motivate the members of this council to actually carry out their duties as liaisons, which I think, and I am probably as remiss or more remiss than anybody up here, so I'm not pointing fingers except at myself on that, but that if the follow-on after a super retreat was that the liaisons actually, I don't know what the right word is, liaised, that they actually communicated with the boards, which I think was the original intention. But actually, to circle back to the beginning, in my vision, in the way I foresee this, this should not be terribly staff intensive, because we're not really going for a result. We're looking to build lines of communication, and perhaps the other boards will say, hey, we're not interested. We'll just have to wait, we'll have to cross that bridge, and then we see it. And then to switch very briefly to the food trucks and Commissioner Wallach's point.
Throw a party and nobody came.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it might very well be. Everything I just said, that people, all the other boards may say, that sounds nice, but I ain't interested. And if that happens, that happens. But that's what I'm saying. We want to at least make the effort and find out. And then in part, the way I know nothing about food truck ordinances, so I have no idea where I'm for them or against them or anything. So I see this as an opportunity to find out what the community thinks about them, and either move forward because I've been persuaded we should move forward, or say, look, we asked the question, we answered the question, let's move along. So that's why I think that's something we can probably do that hopefully isn't too burdensome. And speaking of that, interesting places, do we allow food trucks to park next to the football stadiums at District 99 on football nights? That's a question that I would not want to answer without asking them first. So thank you.
Could I just comment a little bit further to the question that I asked? Staff just said that they're at or exceeding capacity. From my perspective, well, one, I just want to be clear, what Commissioner Waldeck has brought up about this ethics policy, that the mayors call a campaign finance policy, I'm uneasy when we have policies on the books that are, as some have said, unconstitutional and unenforced. So that is unsettling to me, and I think that's something we should address more expeditiously. To me, I'd see that. But from my perspective, these top priority items are what they are, top priority. The facility plan, downtown zoning, comprehensive plan, stormwater utility, the dispatch consolidation. Those to me are my top priority items. If things down at the bottom, in the high priority items we need to push back, then I'm willing to do that. From my perspective, the new item that Commissioner Waldeck has proposed, from my perspective, is, to me, that is a higher priority than either of the two other new items proposed.
Like I said, it's all a big compromise. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't really have a problem with the compromise as currently structured. I hope that the super retreat is as non-staff labor intensive as Commissioner White believes it will be. I think that would make things easier. As far as the food trucks, to me, it's not really a drafting issue. It seems to me that should take very little time at all. But I think the educational component for us as to what the community would be looking for, the Commissioner White referenced, is important. And it could become more labor intensive as we seek more information from the community, whether it's individuals, whether it's District 99, economic development, downtown management, et cetera. And I would hate to see it snowball into something that takes many, many meetings. I'm not going to specifically reference any other decisions. But there have been others that have taken on lives of their own. And what could start out as a very simple thing could turn into something very labor intensive. So
we endeavored that not to happen.
Indeed.
And very briefly, I think a way to avoid that is to make it clear at the beginning who owns the decision, where the decision lies. And if it's a policy decision that we own, we don't ask staff to spend a whole lot of time trying to help us avoid making the decision we don't want to make. I think if we take ownership of decisions that are policy decisions that aren't technical in nature and relieve staff of that obligation, I think we can save a lot of time.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of process, there's a big difference between, okay, let's have a meeting with all these stakeholders and take in all the information and put something on first reading and get it done. And let's hold this public meeting and that public meeting and committee meetings, and all of a sudden we've gone from sort of the two typical village monthly meetings, plus one additional to take feedback, to 5 or 6, and it's taking up all kinds of staff time. That's what I'm looking to avoid.
Staff, and not only staff time, but I'm more to an organizational capacity. It was a topic I talked about the last long-range plan session. From my perspective, organizational capacity is an issue that we need to be concerned about. And, if an issue, as Commissioner Jose, you're referencing, if the issue snowballs into a massive, public, group for it, group against it, major type of decision, wordsmithing on the dais, things of that nature, it could be, so I get your point.
Commissioner Waldeck.
If everybody else is gone, and I don't mind taking a second bite at the apple here. No, Dave, when you read off the list, it's a full list. It's very busy, and you get through all that, and it's a lot of accomplishments. But when you go through the list, not everybody on staff is involved in each and every activity. And so, basically when you're talking about comp plan and zoning, that involves certain staff members and not others. When you're talking food trucks, maybe basically the same group. Stormwater, we pretty much have the budget for the upcoming year, but putting together a referendum question and putting things on hold, I'm not going to say it's not complicated to put together referendum questions. It's not going to take a lot of staff time at this point. So
it's the public education campaign on the referendum question. That's the time.
And that's it. So that each item, when you look at Dave's workload, it's a lot. But when he designates who runs it, who's in charge, how much time, then you have to ask, have we reached that capacity? And I guess what I'd be interested in is who owns some of these items and what percentage of time, basically. And I'm not asking for a massive report with all kinds of data and that, but just a rough idea of who's at capacity and what's needed. For example, for a review of the ethics ordinance, it would more involve the village attorney and a lot of thought by the folks up here, as opposed to, let's say, community development and public works and others that may be at capacity on other items. I think you're following what I'm getting. It's not,
Understood.
So maybe if we had an idea of who's at capacity, then maybe we can understand this a little better, because if you assume the whole organization is working on all 13 items, That just isn't true.
I do have a very quick point of clarification from Treasurer Waldeck. Speaking of the ethics ordinance, you're talking primarily about the campaign finance aspects of it?
Yeah.
So that's probably a better way to say it. So it seems to be a very simple question. How much of our ordinance violates the Citizens United's report decision? But that also may come back to us, that if we are skeptical about being close to the line on that, that may just be our political decision that may come rather quickly.
Yeah, I don't see, personally, I don't see a lot of time and effort put into that, certainly in comparison to the other items. But, you know, I think this is something worth pursuing naturally. That's why I bring it up. But it should also be have its appropriate designation. You know, if it belongs on the list, it goes on the list. If it's low on the list and it gets bumped off later, so be it, you know. But I think...
Hey, Mayor?
Commissioner Jose and Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks. I'm going to keep this brief. I think one of the things that Commissioner White has said multiple times in this discussion is instructive when thinking about these last comments. We have to understand what decisions we own and what decisions staff own. And I think we run into the possibility of micromanaging things. Yeah, to grab a sports analogy, we're the coach, we're calling the play. It's Dave's job as the quarterback to execute that play. And who is assigned to what project and whatnot is a level of micromanagement that I'm not comfortable getting into. I trust Dave and Enza to make those calls themselves.
I concur with that.
We'll go to Commissioner Barnett, but just to start the list, I am in favor of the proposed revision on page 9 of 22 of the manager's information item 2016-6812. Commissioner Barnett.
Second that emotion. I think what we're doing right now is why this takes so long. This council certainly before, this isn't a criticism of this council, it's the culture in Downers Grove is one that everybody up here actually gets into this stuff and wants to try and figure it out and wants to find a way to include the community in those decisions. And that makes every decision way more burdensome. But what we've got a pattern of doing for years now is going through this planning process. I mean, Mayor, I'll harken back to one of the meetings I'm sure you enjoyed most with me, where we spat at each other for a while. There's nobody up here that I would suggest that wishes we would do more in terms of a workload standpoint than I. But what we have done as a pattern, both in this council and the prior one, is go through that wrestling match, figure out that list, and then let staff deal with it. So what I would suggest for this is, and take their feedback genuinely and specifically about workload and capacity. If somebody wants to change that list now, we should just open it up as a proposal to change the list, not try and figure out who's doing what inside 801 or what the process takes to settle any one of these issues. I think Dave already said if we want to change it or add to it, he'd like to come back to us. That would seem to me consistent with the process to this point on long-range planning and adjustments that have been made midstream. Mayor, I'd agree with you at this point in terms of the question immediately before us. I like the plan adjustments as presented. If somebody else wants to get 4 head nods on the next one, David, sorry to say head nods, but
I'm fine with the plan adjustments as presented in the report given us in advance of the meeting. I think we can get at the campaign finance actions of the ethics ordinance without necessarily adding it to this list, perhaps with the appropriate element of new business, which may not require. Basically, we may just want to make it have staff prepare one report for one meeting, and then we make a decision in the context of Citizens United. If someone wishes to,
if you'd like to do that, I think that's, if that's how we want to handle that item, as without, maybe not making an item here and doing it through the new business process, I'm fine with that.
You okay with the proposed revision of the work plan for now?
Yeah, Commissioner Waldeck was going to jump in and suggest that, but I mean, if we can go through the new business process on that, then I'm fine with that.
Well, we always can.
All right, great.
I'm fine with the new business.
It's always been available.
All right, well, I appreciate that. I think we're fine. All right, there you go, it's unanimous.
As I was going to say, I received clear direction tonight, so thank you. I appreciate it. That ends the manager's report, Mayor. Thank you.
Sometimes you take the high road, sometimes you take the low road, but we'll all get to Scotland at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That brings us to item 10, the attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca.
Thank you. We are only one item tonight, and that is an ordinance on adopting the International Code Council Energy Conservation Code. That will be on next week's agenda. That is all. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. It brings us to item 11, council member reports or liaison reports. Start with Commissioner Jose.
No report,
Commissioner Waldeck.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner Fatimo. Commissioner Barnett.
Mayor, I'll just follow up and confirm you were once again correct, as you so often are. The Cupcake Classic, indeed, 8 a.m. race start. There's a kid 1 mile run at 8, so you wouldn't want to miss that. The 5K run and walk itself actually starts at 8:30. I believe registration begins at 7.
Thank you for clarifying.
No report.
Commissioner White, Commissioner
No
Olson.
report.
Very good. Well, with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you. We are adjourned. Good night.